The fluorescent lights of St. Sebastian's Children's Hospital hummed their familiar lullaby as I pushed my cleaning cart down the empty corridor. 3:45 in the morning. 15 minutes until the screaming would start again. I'd worked the night shift for 8 months now, long enough to know the rhythm of this place. The quiet hours between 2 and 5, when even the sickest children finally surrendered to sleep. The soft beeping of monitors. The whisper of nurses' shoes on linoleum. The particular smell of industrial cleaner mixed with the faint sweetness of pediatric medicine. Long enough to know that something was very, very wrong on the 4th floor. My name is Sofia Chen, 28 years old, and I clean floors to pay for my younger sister's college tuition. Not glamorous work, but honest. I dropped out of nursing school when our parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. Someone had to keep the lights on, and Lily's future mattered more than my own dreams. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The night supervisor, Mrs. Kowalski, had warned me about the 4th floor when I started. "Private wing," she'd said, her Polish accent thick with disapproval. "Very expensive rooms. Very important families. You clean quickly, you don't ask questions, you don't bother anyone." I'd followed those rules religiously for 8 months, until the screaming started 2 weeks ago. It happened every night at exactly 3 in the morning. 2 small voices, high-pitched with terror, coming from room 414. Twin boys, I'd learned from whispered conversations between nurses. Marco and Matteo Valentini, 4 years old, brought in 3 weeks ago after some kind of incident no one would discuss. Their father owned half of Chicago's waterfront. Legitimate businesses on paper, shipping, import-export, luxury hotels. Everyone knew Dante Valentini's real empire was built on things that didn't appear in accounting ledgers. Things that made nurses speak in hushed tones and avoid the 4th floor when possible. I'd never met him. The few times I'd glimpsed him in the corridor, he'd been surrounded by men in dark suits with watchful eyes and telltale bulges under their jackets. He moved through the hospital like a storm system, all controlled power and barely contained violence. But his children screamed every night, and no one seemed able to stop it. I pushed my cart past the nurse's station. Only one nurse tonight, a young woman named Sarah who'd been kind to me when I first started. She looked up from her computer, her expression troubled. "Sophia," she said quietly, "you might want to skip 414 tonight. Mr. Valentini is not in a good mood." "The boys?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She nodded. 3rd night in a row he stayed. The doctors can't find anything medically wrong. No night terrors, no seizures, nothing that explains it. But the screaming. She shuddered. "It's getting worse." I should have taken her advice. Should have cleaned the other rooms and left 414 for the day shift. But something pulled me toward that room, some instinct I couldn't name. The corridor leading to the private suites was different from the rest of the hospital. Carpet instead of linoleum. Artwork on the walls instead of motivational posters. These rooms cost more per night than I made in a week. 2 men stood outside 414. Security, but not hospital security. They had the same watchful quality as the men who accompanied Dante Valentini, the same economical movements of people trained in violence. "Cleaning," I said quietly, gesturing to my cart. The taller one, with a scar running along his jawline, studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded and stepped aside, but I could feel his eyes on me as I knocked softly and entered the room. The suite was large, decorated in soft blues and greens meant to be soothing. 2 small beds sat against the far wall, each occupied by a sleeping child. Medical equipment blinked quietly in the corner, monitoring heartbeats and oxygen levels. And in the chair between the beds sat Dante Valentini. I'd never been this close to him before. The corridor glimpses hadn't prepared me for the reality of his presence. He was 40, perhaps, with dark hair silvering at the temples and eyes the color of espresso. His suit probably cost more than my car, even rumpled from a night spent in a hospital chair. A day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and exhaustion carved lines around his eyes. But it was his hands that caught my attention. Large, capable hands, roughened by more than just paperwork, resting gently on the small forms of his sleeping sons. One hand on each bed, maintaining physical contact with both boys even in sleep. He looked up when I entered, and the intensity of his gaze nearly made me step back. Not anger, exactly, but a desperate kind of vigilance that suggested he hadn't truly slept in days. "I can come back," I whispered, already backing toward the door. "No." His voice was rough, pitched low to avoid waking the children. "Clean. Just quietly." I nodded and began my routine, moving through the space with practiced silence. The bathroom first, then the floor, working my way around the furniture with careful efficiency. I'd learned to be invisible, to complete my work without disturbing patients. But I couldn't help watching the boys. They were beautiful children, identical in every way. Dark curls against white pillows, long lashes casting shadows on round cheeks. They looked peaceful now, but I'd heard their screams echo down the corridor for 2 weeks. Terror so raw it made my chest ache. The clock on the wall read 2:58. I was emptying the trash when Dante Valentini spoke again. "You work here every night?" I turned, surprised he'd noticed me at all. "Yes, sir. Night shift, 6 days a week." "So you've heard them?" Not a question. The screaming. I hesitated, unsure how much honesty this man wanted. But his eyes held something I recognized, the bone-deep fear of a parent who couldn't protect his children. "Yes," I admitted quietly. "Every night for 2 weeks. Always at 3 in the morning." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or frustration. "The doctors say there's nothing wrong with them. No medical explanation. The nurses think I'm paranoid, that I'm seeing problems that don't exist." "Are you?" I asked, then immediately regretted the boldness. "You didn't question men like Dante Valentini." You nodded and agreed and got out of their way. But he didn't seem offended. If anything, his expression softened slightly. "No. Something is terrifying my sons every night at exactly 3 in the morning. Something real enough to make them scream like they're being murdered. And I can't find it. Can't stop it. Can't protect them from it." The admission cost him something. I could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way his hands unconsciously tightened on his son's blankets. Men like him didn't confess weakness easily. "What happened 3 weeks ago?" I asked. "The nurses say the boys have been here since then, but no one will tell me why." His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, someone tried to take them. Kidnapping attempt in our own home. My security stopped it, but he looked at his sleeping sons, and raw anguish crossed his face. Marco saw something. Something that traumatized him so badly he stopped speaking. Matteo follows his brother's lead. They've been mute for 3 weeks except for the screaming. My heart clenched. "I'm so sorry. I moved them here because I thought a hospital would be safer than home. More people watching, medical staff if they needed help. But whatever they're afraid of followed them here." His voice dropped even lower. "Or maybe it was here all along." The clock struck 3. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. The room remained peaceful, the boys sleeping soundly, their father's hands gentle on their blankets. Then, in perfect synchronization, both children's eyes snapped open. I'd never seen terror like that in a child's face. Pure, animal fear that transcended language. Their mouths opened, and the screaming began. It wasn't crying. It wasn't the normal distress of frightened children. This was primal terror, the sound of prey recognizing a predator. High-pitched and unrelenting, it filled the room until I wanted to cover my ears. Dante Valentini was on his feet instantly, gathering both boys into his arms, trying to soothe them with words they couldn't hear over their own screaming. I'm here, you're safe, Papa's here." But they weren't looking at him. They were looking past him, toward the corner of the room. The darkest corner, where the night light didn't quite reach. I followed their gaze and saw nothing. Just shadows and the silent medical equipment. The boys saw something else entirely. Marco pointed with a shaking hand, his screams intensifying. Matteo buried his face in his father's chest, his small body convulsing with sobs. And in that moment, watching Dante Valentini try desperately to comfort children who couldn't be comforted, something shifted in my chest. I'd spent 8 months being invisible, following rules, keeping my head down. But these were children in terror, and a father in agony, and sometimes the rules mattered less than doing what was right. I moved toward the corner the boys were staring at. Dante's eyes snapped to me, warning and confusion mixed in his expression. But I ignored him, focusing instead on the space that seemed to hold such horror for the twins. The air felt different here. Colder, maybe, or heavier. I knelt down, bringing myself to the children's eye level, and looked at the corner from their perspective. That's when I saw it. Not clearly, not enough to be certain. Just a shift in the shadows, a darkness that seemed deeper than it should be. And on the wall, barely visible unless you were looking from exactly this angle, marks. Small scratches in the paint, almost hidden by the medical equipment. "Mr. Valentini," I said, my voice cutting through the screaming. "Come look at this." He hesitated, unwilling to move away from his sons, even for a moment. But something in my tone must have convinced him. He carried both boys across the room, positioning himself so he could see what I was seeing. The scratches formed words. Child-sized letters, carved with something sharp. "He comes at 3." The screaming stopped abruptly. Both boys stared at the words, then at me, then at their father. Marco's small hand reached out, touching the wall, tracing the letters he must have carved. "Marco!" Dante's voice cracked with emotion. "Did you write this?" The boy nodded, still mute, but communication nonetheless. "Who comes at 3?" I asked gently. "Can you show us?" Marco pointed to the corner again, then made a gesture I didn't understand. "Tall, maybe, or thin." His little hands moved in frantic pantomime, trying to convey something his voice couldn't. Matteo tugged on his father's sleeve and pointed to the closet. Dante set the boys down carefully, his body positioning itself between them and whatever threat they perceived. He moved toward the closet with the fluid grace of someone trained in violence, his hand reaching inside his jacket. I realized with a start that he was armed. In a children's hospital, with guards outside and security cameras everywhere, Dante Valentini carried a gun. He yanked open the closet door in one smooth motion, weapon raised. Empty. Just blankets and supplies, and the normal detritus of a hospital room. But Matteo was shaking his head frantically, pointing not at the closet but at its back wall. At a panel that looked slightly different from the others, a maintenance access point I'd never noticed before. Dante noticed it too. He handed me his gun without hesitation, trusting a stranger with his weapon because his son's safety mattered more than protocol. Then he pulled the panel away. Behind it was a crawl space, dark and narrow. And in that darkness, fresh footprints in the dust. Adult-sized, leading from the maintenance corridor into the room. Someone had been entering this room every night. Someone who knew about the access panel, who could move through the hospital's infrastructure unseen. Someone who had been visiting 2 traumatized children in the dead of night. The boys hadn't been having night terrors. They'd been experiencing something far worse, reality. Dante pulled out his phone with shaking hands, already calling his head of security. His voice was cold, controlled, but I could see rage building beneath the surface. "Emilio! 4th floor, room 14. I need a team here now. And I need building schematics showing every crawl space, every access point, every way someone could move through this hospital unseen." He turned to me, and the gratitude in his eyes was almost painful to witness. "You found this. You believed them when everyone else said there was nothing wrong." "They're children," I said simply. "Children don't scream like that for no reason." "What's your name?" "Sofia Chen." "Sofia." He tested the name, as if committing it to memory. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You don't owe me anything. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing the room in dim red. But in that brief moment of darkness, I heard it. Movement in the crawl space. The sound of someone retreating rapidly, having heard Dante's phone call. He heard it too. In one fluid motion, he had his sons behind him and was pulling me toward the door, away from the closet and its hidden access point. "Get them out," he told me, pressing his phone into my hand. "Call the number labeled Emilio. Tell him we have an active intruder. Take the boys to the nurse's station and don't let anyone near them except hospital security." "What are you? Hunting?" His smile was cold and predatory. "Someone has been terrorizing my children for 2 weeks. They're about to learn why that was a terminal mistake." He disappeared into the crawlspace before I could argue, leaving me alone with 2 frightened children and the certain knowledge that violence was about to unfold in St. Sebastian's Children's Hospital. Marco and Matteo clung to me immediately, their small hands grasping my cleaning uniform. I scooped them both up, they were light, too light for 4-year-olds, and carried them toward the door. The guards outside were already moving, weapons drawn, responding to the power outage with professional efficiency. The scarred one, Emilio, I realized, took one look at my face and the boys in my arms and understood. Where's the boss? In the crawlspace. Someone's been coming through the maintenance access. He went after them. Emilio cursed in Italian and gestured to his partner. Stay with them. No one gets close. Then he was moving down the corridor with frightening speed. I carried the boys to the nurse's station, where Sarah was already on the phone with hospital security. The whole floor was waking up, other patients stirring, nurses emerging from rooms to investigate the power outage. What happened? Sarah asked, staring at me, holding Dante Valentini's children. Someone's been entering their room at night, through the maintenance crawlspace. Mr. Valentini went after them. Her eyes widened. We need to evacuate the floor. We need to lock it down, I corrected. Whoever was in that crawlspace is still in the building. They can't leave. Sarah hesitated, then nodded and made another call. Within minutes, security guards were positioned at every exit, every stairwell, every elevator. The 4th floor became a fortress. Marco and Matteo sat in my lap behind the nurse's station, silent but no longer screaming. Their small bodies pressed against mine, seeking comfort from a stranger because their father was hunting their monster in the dark. The weight of that trust settled over me like a physical thing. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. The emergency lighting made everything look ominous, shadows deeper than they should be. Then I heard it. A single gunshot, muffled by distance and walls, but unmistakable. Marco's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Not fear this time, but something else. Recognition, maybe. The sound of his father protecting them. 5 more minutes of agonizing silence. Then Emilio's voice crackled over the security guard's radio. 4th floor secure. We have one in custody. Boss is en route to your location. The relief that flooded through me was disproportionate to my involvement. These weren't my children, and Dante Valentini wasn't my responsibility. But I'd spent 2 weeks listening to those boys scream, and now I knew why, and the thought that their nightmare might finally be over made my eyes burn with unexpected tears. Dante appeared at the end of a corridor, flanked by Emilio and 2 other guards. Between them, they dragged a man in maintenance coveralls, his hands zip-tied behind his back, blood streaming from a shoulder wound. The hospital staff gave them a wide berth. This was Dante Valentini's world, not theirs, and they knew better than to interfere. He knelt in front of me, ignoring the blood on his hands, focusing only on his sons. Marco, Matteo, look at me. Both boys turned from my lap to face their father. The man who scared you, he can't hurt you anymore. He'll never come into your room again. You're safe. Do you understand? You're safe. Marco's mouth opened. For 2 weeks, for 3 entire weeks, these children had been silent. But now, in a voice hoarse from screaming but clear as a bell, he spoke. Papa. Just one word, but it broke something in Dante Valentini's carefully controlled expression. He gathered both boys into his arms, his shoulders shaking with the force of emotion he could no longer contain. I stood quietly, giving them space, watching this powerful man reduced to tears by the simple miracle of his son's voice. When he finally composed himself, Dante looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You gave them back to me. Not just their safety, but their voices. How do I even begin to thank you for that? You don't have to. I do. His voice was firm now, controlled. Sofia Chen, you walked into a situation that wasn't your responsibility and solved a problem that had defeated doctors, security professionals, and every resource I could bring to bear. You did it because it was the right thing to do, expecting nothing in return. He stood, still holding his sons, and I realized how tall he was, how he could be gentle with children and terrifying to enemies in equal measure. I don't know what your life looks like outside this hospital, he continued. I don't know your dreams or your struggles, or what keeps you working night shifts cleaning floors. But I know that you're the kind of person I want around my children. The kind of person who sees terror and moves toward it instead of away. Mr. Valentini, I'm offering you a job. Whatever you're making here, I'll triple it. You'll live in my home, help care for my sons, and never have to worry about money again. You'll have your own space, complete autonomy, and the gratitude of a father whose children you just saved. The offer was insane. Impossible. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was tied to this hospital job and the steady paycheck that kept Lily in school. But looking at Marco and Matteo, at the trust in their dark eyes as they reached small hands toward me, I knew my answer before my practical brain could object. My sister, I said. She's in college. I'm paying her tuition. I'll pay it, Dante said immediately. All of it. Every semester until she graduates. Room and board too if she needs it. Your sister will want for nothing. I don't even know you. Then get to know me. Give me 1 month. If you're unhappy, if you feel unsafe, if you want to leave for any reason, I'll pay you 3 months' salary and help you find whatever job you want. But Sofia, please. His voice cracked slightly. Please give my sons the chance to know the woman who saved them. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at me with wide eyes. Looked at my cleaning cart and the mop bucket and the industrial cleaner that had been my constant companions for 8 months. Looked at the life I'd built from necessity and sacrifice. Then I looked at Marco and Matteo and made a choice that would change everything. 1 month, I agreed. We'll see how it goes. Dante Valentini's smile transformed his entire face. 1 month. That's all I ask. But we both knew it was a lie. 1 month would become 2, then 3, then forever. Because I'd already started falling, not for the dangerous man in the expensive suit, but for the father who'd spent 2 weeks sleeping in a hospital chair to protect his traumatized sons. And maybe, just maybe, he was falling too. The maintenance man's name was Victor Kane, and the full horror of what he'd been doing unfolded over the next few hours. I sat in a private conference room on the hospital's administrative floor, Marco asleep in my lap and Matteo curled against my side, while Dante and his security team pieced together the story. The police had been called, but Dante's people had gotten to Kane first, and the interrogation happening in a secured room down the hall was not following standard law enforcement protocols. He's a registered sex offender, Emilio reported, his voice flat with disgust. Did 18 months for possession of child pornography, got out 2 years ago. Somehow passed the hospital's background check by using a fake identity. How? Dante's voice was dangerously quiet. The agency that supplies maintenance workers, they don't do thorough vetting. Just basic checks that Kane's false identity cleared. Emilio's jaw tightened. He's been working here for 14 months. Access to every floor, every room, every vulnerable child in this building. My stomach turned. The boys in my lap suddenly felt infinitely precious and infinitely fragile. The Valentini boys weren't his first targets, Emilio continued. We found his apartment. He had photographs, dozens of them, of children in this hospital. But Marco and Matteo were different. He became obsessed with them after the kidnapping attempt. Why? I asked, then immediately regretted speaking. This wasn't my meeting, and I was just the janitor who'd stumbled into something far beyond my understanding. But Dante looked at me with something like gratitude. Because of me, Kane saw the news coverage of the kidnapping attempt, saw that Dante Valentini's sons had been moved to St. Sebastian's for protection. He fixated on them specifically because they were mine. He wanted to hurt you through them, I said quietly, understanding dawning. He wanted to own something of mine, corrupt something I loved. The screaming, the terror, that was just the beginning. Dante's hands clenched into fists. If you hadn't found those scratches, if we hadn't discovered the access panel, he would have escalated. And my sons, he couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We all understood what Kane had been building toward. The hospital is being sued, Emilio added. Our lawyers are handling it. Every maintenance worker who had access to the pediatric floor is being revetted. The agency is being shut down. But Sofia, he looked at me directly. You saved more than just Marco and Matteo tonight. Kane had identified 3 other children as potential targets. Because of you, they're safe too. The weight of that settled over me. I'd been pushing a cleaning cart and trying to make rent. Now I was sitting in a private conference room while a Mafia boss's head of security told me I'd saved multiple children from a predator. I just noticed some scratches, I said, uncomfortable with the praise. You noticed because you cared enough to look, Dante corrected. The nurses walked past that corner every day. The doctors examined my sons in that room. My own security swept it for threats. But you, Sofia, you got down on your knees and looked at the world from their perspective. That's not luck. That's who you are. Marco stirred in my lap, his small hand reaching up to touch my face. Even in sleep, he seemed to know I was there, seemed to find comfort in my presence. They trust you already, Dante observed, his voice soft. Children know. They can sense who's safe and who isn't. Mine have been through hell, and they're choosing you. Or maybe they're just exhausted and I'm warm, I said, trying to deflect the intensity of his attention. Maybe, he agreed. But I don't think so. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah appeared, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Valentini, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with Sofia. Dante nodded, and I carefully extracted myself from the sleeping boys, settling them on the conference room couch with practiced efficiency. Sarah pulled me into the corridor, her expression troubled. Sofia, what are you doing? What do you mean? You're getting involved with Dante Valentini. Do you understand what that means? Who he is? I know he's a man whose children needed help. He's a criminal, Sarah hissed, keeping her voice low. Everyone knows it. The shipping business, the hotels, that's all a front. His real money comes from things that get people killed. And now you're going to live in his house, care for his children, be part of his world? For 1 month, I corrected. I agreed to try for 1 month. And then what? You think he'll just walk away? Men like Dante Valentini don't let people walk away, Sofia. Once you're in for life. Her concern was genuine, and I appreciated it. Sarah had been kind to me when I started, had shown me which doctors were decent and which nurses to avoid. She was trying to protect me, but she didn't understand. Couldn't understand what it meant to watch those children scream every night, to see their father's helpless agony, to be the only person who looked close enough to find the truth. I appreciate you worrying about me, I said gently. But Sarah, I've spent 3 years doing nothing but surviving. Working night shifts, paying bills, sacrificing everything for my sister's future. Maybe it's time I did something that matters beyond just getting by. Taking care of a mob boss's children matters. Protecting children always matters. Whatever else Dante Valentini is, he's a father who loves his sons. And those boys need someone they can trust. For 1 month, I'm going to be that person. After that, we'll see. Sarah studied me for a long moment, then sighed. You're different than you were 8 months ago. Stronger, maybe. Or more reckless. I can't decide which. Maybe both, I admitted. Just be careful. And Sofia. She squeezed my hand. If you ever need help, if things get dangerous or complicated, you call me. Promise. I promise. We returned to the conference room to find Dante on the phone, speaking rapid Italian with increasing frustration. He ended the call with a curse that made me grateful the boys were still sleeping. Problem? Emilio asked. The press got wind of the arrest. By morning, every news outlet in Chicago will be running stories about a predator in St. Sebastian's Children's Hospital. The hospital's lawyers are already trying to suppress details about the Valentini connection, but, he shook his head, the house isn't safe anymore. Too many people will know the boys are being discharged today. Safe house, Emilio suggested. No, the boys have been moved too many times already. They need stability, familiar faces, a sense of home. Dante looked at his sleeping sons, something like despair crossing his face. But I don't know where that is anymore. An idea formed in my mind. Reckless, probably stupid, but the words were out before I could stop them. My apartment. Both men turned to stare at me. It's small, I continued quickly. 1 bedroom in a neighborhood no one associates with. You. No one would think to look for Dante Valentini's children in a converted warehouse in Pilsen. It's not fancy or luxurious, but it's safe. Anonymous. Sofia, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. 1 month, right? We were going to figure out living arrangements anyway. This just moves up the timeline. Dante studied me with those intense dark eyes, and I could see him calculating risks and benefits, weighing my offer against a dozen other options. Your sister, he said finally. Does she live with you? No, she has a dorm at Northwestern. She comes home on weekends sometimes, but with finals coming up, I probably won't see her for a few weeks. So it would be you, me, and the boys. In your one-bedroom apartment. And Emilio, I added, looking at the head of security. Because there's no way you're leaving them unguarded. Emilio's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Smart woman. I have a sleeping bag, I continued. You and the boys can have the bedroom. Emilio can take the couch. I'll sleep on the floor. It's not the Ritz, but it's only temporary. Until you figure out a more permanent solution. Why would you do this? Dante asked quietly. You barely know us. This morning you were a janitor trying to stay invisible. Now you're offering to harbor a crime boss and his children in your home. This morning those boys were still screaming every night. I countered. And their father looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Things change. People change. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts about who needs help. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving my face. Then, slowly, he nodded. 1 month, he agreed. But Sofia, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. My enemies are numerous and creative. If anyone discovers that my sons are staying in your apartment, you become a target. The danger I'm bringing into your life is real and potentially lethal. Then we'll be careful. We'll be smart. And you'll teach me how to protect them if something goes wrong. You want me to teach you? You said I'd be helping care for your sons. That includes keeping them safe, doesn't it? I can't do that if I'm helpless. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of real trust. Most people in your position would be running away from danger, not asking me to train them for it. I'm not most people, I said, echoing his earlier words. And those boys deserve someone who won't fall apart in a crisis. Emilio laughed, a short bark of genuine amusement. Boss, I like her. She's either incredibly brave or completely insane, but either way she's got spine. Both, Dante said, his eyes still on me. She's definitely both. We left the hospital as dawn was breaking, transforming the Chicago skyline into shades of amber and rose. Dante carried Marco while I held Matteo, and Emilio flanked us with the coiled alertness of a predator expecting attack. My ancient Honda Civic looked absurd next to Dante's armored Mercedes, but we'd agreed that taking his vehicle would defeat the purpose of anonymity. Emilio drove, Dante sat in the passenger seat, and I wedged myself in the back with both boys in car seats that Emilio had somehow procured in the 15 minutes it took us to discharge. I don't even want to know where you got these, I said, buckling Matteo in with careful precision. Boss has resources, Emilio said simply. Car seats, weapons, fake identities, all part of the service. That's deeply comforting. Dante glanced back at me, and I caught the hint of a smile. You're handling this well. Most people would be having a nervous breakdown by now. Ask me again in an hour when I'm trying to figure out how to feed everyone breakfast with whatever's left in my fridge. We'll order in, he said. I know a place that makes excellent cornetti. The boys love them. Italian pastries at 7 in the morning. Very practical parenting. You're judging my parenting already? I'm judging your breakfast choices. The parenting jury is still out. Matteo giggled, the first sound of happiness I'd heard from him. The noise startled all of us, and Dante turned fully in his seat to stare at his son. What's funny, Piccolo? He asked gently. Matteo pointed at me, then at his father, then giggled again. Marco joined in, both boys laughing at some joke only they understood. They like the banter, Emilio observed. Kids pick up on tension. You two pretending everything's normal probably makes them feel safer than any security protocol. We drove through Chicago's waking streets, past coffee shops opening their doors and commuters beginning their morning routines. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a mafia boss and his children were passing through their neighborhood. My apartment building was a converted factory in Pilsen, all exposed brick and questionable plumbing, but cheap enough that I could afford it while still sending money to Lily. We climbed 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was perpetually broken, and I tried to see my space through Dante's eyes. Small. That was the kindest description. My bedroom was barely large enough for a double bed and a dresser. The living room held a couch, a coffee table, and a television that only got basic cable. The kitchen was functional but cramped, with appliances that belonged at a museum of 1980s technology. But it was clean. I'd made sure of that. and the morning light coming through the tall factory windows made the space feel larger than it was. "It's perfect," Dante said, and I couldn't tell if he was being sincere or polite. "It's small and kind of shabby," I corrected. "But it's paid for, and the neighbors mind their own business, which is probably valuable right now." Emilio was already checking sight lines and exits, his professional assessment of security risks obvious. Windows face the courtyard, no direct line of sight from other buildings. "Good. Stairwell is the weak point, only one way in or out. I'll position myself here." He indicated the small hallway between the living room and bedroom. "Clear view of the door. Can respond to either room quickly." "You're really going to sleep in my hallway?" I asked. "I'm really not going to sleep much," he corrected. "But when I do, the hallway works fine." Marco and Matteo were exploring the apartment with the curious caution of children in a new space. They gravitated toward the windows, pressing small hands against the glass to look down at the courtyard below. "They've been cooped up in a hospital room for 3 weeks, Dante explained, watching them with soft eyes. "I'd forgotten how much they love to explore. There's a small park 2 blocks from here," I offered. "Nothing fancy, but it has swings and a sandbox. If you think it's safe enough. With proper security, maybe. In a few days, once we're certain no one's tracked us here." He turned to me, and the gratitude in his expression was almost painful to witness. "Thank you, Sofia, for all of this. You're paying me, remember? Tripling my salary. And covering Lily's tuition. This is just part of the job." "No," he said quietly. "This is far beyond any job. This is kindness, trust, faith that we're worth the risk you're taking." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach dropped. She never called this early unless something was wrong. "I need to take this," I said, moving toward the bedroom for privacy. "Lily, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." My sister's voice was bright with excitement. "Sofia, you won't believe what just happened. I just got an email from the financial aid office. Some anonymous donor paid off my entire tuition for this semester and next. All of it. I don't have to work 3 jobs anymore. I can actually focus on my studies." "Lily, slow down." They said the donor specifically requested to help students who lost parents young and were putting themselves through school. "That's us, Sofia. That's exactly us. Can you believe it?" I looked through the open bedroom door to where Dante stood with his sons, his back to me but his phone in his hand. He'd made the call while I was answering mine. "Yeah," I said softly. "I can believe it. Isn't it amazing? I mean, what are the odds that some wealthy philanthropist would choose me?" "Pretty good odds, actually. Listen, Lil, I have to go. But I'm happy for you. Really happy. You deserve this. You deserve it too. You've sacrificed so much." "I'm fine. Better than fine. Focus on your finals and stop worrying about me, okay?" We said our goodbyes, and I returned to the living room to find Dante setting up the boys with coloring books he'd somehow procured. More of his mysterious resources at work. "You paid her tuition," I said. "Just now while I was on the phone. I said I would. I always keep my promises. But I haven't even started working for you yet. What if I change my mind? What if I decide this is too crazy and walk away?" He looked up at me, his dark eyes serious. "Then Lily's tuition is still paid. My promises aren't conditional, Sofia. You save my sons. That debt exists regardless of whether you stay." That's... I struggle to find words. That's incredibly generous. Or incredibly manipulative. I can't decide which. Can it be both? A hint of a smile. "I'm a complicated man. You're a crime boss. That too. Does it matter?" I thought about the question seriously. 24 hours ago, I would have said yes. Crime was crime, and no amount of charitable donations could erase that. But standing in my small apartment, watching Dante Valentini color with his sons while his head of security mapped exit strategies, everything felt more complicated than simple moral absolutes. "I don't know," I admitted. "Ask me again in a month." 1 month, he agreed. Though I'm starting to think we're both lying to ourselves about that timeline. "Why do you say that?" He gestured to Marco and Matteo, now completely absorbed in their coloring. "Because my sons already look more peaceful than they have in 3 weeks. Because you're already treating them like they're yours to protect. Because something changed in that hospital room, Sofia, and I don't think either of us can undo it. He was right, and we both knew it, but acknowledging that felt dangerous, like admitting to something that couldn't be taken back. I should make breakfast, I said instead. Real food, not just Italian pastries. I ordered the cornetti already. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Of course you did. I'm efficient. You're presumptuous. That too. Marco tugged on my sleeve, showing me his coloring page. He'd drawn something that might have been a house or possibly a spaceship, rendered in aggressive purple and red. That's beautiful, I told him seriously. What is it? He pointed to 4 stick figures, 2 large, 2 small, standing in front of the purple structure. Then he pointed to me, to his father, to Matteo, and finally to himself. That's us, I asked, my throat suddenly tight. He nodded and went back to coloring, adding more details to the structure that was apparently supposed to be this apartment. Dante met my eyes over his sons' heads. See, they've already decided your family. Children don't lie about things like this. They barely know me. They know what matters. That you're safe. That you see them as people, not problems. That you move toward their fear instead of away from it. He paused. That's more than most people in their lives have done. What about their mother? I asked, then immediately regretted the question. I'm sorry. That's none of my business. No, it's fair to ask. If you're going to help care for them, you should know. He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Isabella died when the boys were 18 months old. Cancer. Fast and brutal. She made me promise I'd protect them, give them a normal life, keep them safe from my world. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. That must have been devastating. It broke me, he admitted simply. For a while, I wasn't sure I could keep my promise. How do you raise children alone when your business requires violence, and your enemies are always circling? How do you give them normal when nothing about your life is normal? But you did. You kept them safe. Until I didn't. Until someone tried to take them from our own home, and Marco saw things no child should see. His hands clenched. I failed Isabella. Failed them. You're still here. Still fighting for them. Still putting them first. I moved to sit beside him on the floor, where we could watch the boys color. That's not failure. That's love. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough. You remind me of her sometimes. Not in looks or manner, but in the way you move through the world. Isabella always saw people clearly. She never let my reputation color her judgment. She looked at Dante Valentini the person, not the crime boss. And what did she see? Someone worth saving. His smile was sad. She was wrong, but she believed it anyway. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe you just forgot how to see yourself through her eyes. The doorbell rang before he could respond, and Emilio moved to answer it with his hand on his concealed weapon. But it was just the pastry delivery, and soon we were sitting in my small living room eating cornetti and drinking coffee, while the boys demolished chocolate-filled croissants with gleeful enthusiasm. This is nice, Matteo said suddenly, his small voice startling all of us. Like his brother, he'd been silent for 3 weeks, and hearing him speak felt like a minor miracle. What's nice, Piccolo? Dante asked gently. This. All of us. Being safe. He looked up at me with dark eyes so trusting it made my chest ache. Sofia keeps the monsters away. I didn't do anything, I protested. You found the scratches, Marco corrected, his own voice, still hoarse but growing stronger. You looked when no one else did. You're the monster hunter. Dante's expression was unreadable, but I saw him blink rapidly several times. Emilio had turned away, suddenly very interested in checking his phone. I'm not a monster hunter, I said. I'm just someone who cares about keeping you safe. That's what monster hunters do, Marco said with perfect 4-year-old logic. They care about keeping people safe. So you're a monster hunter. I looked at Dante helplessly and found him smiling through obvious emotion. They've decided, he said. There's no arguing with them once they've made up their minds. Trust me, I've tried. So I'm officially the monster hunter now. Apparently. I hope you're comfortable with the responsibility. Looking at Marco and Matteo, their small faces bright with relief and happiness for the first time in weeks, I found that I was terrifyingly, impossibly comfortable with it. 1 month, I said, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. 1 month, Dante agreed. But we both knew we were lying. The first week in my apartment passed in a strange domestic rhythm I'd never experienced before. Dante proved surprisingly competent at cooking, preparing simple pasta dishes and roasted vegetables, while I tried to keep Marco and Matteo entertained in my tiny living room. Emilio rotated with other security personnel, maintaining a constant presence without being intrusive. The boys' personalities emerged gradually. Marco was quieter, more observant, with a tendency to watch and assess before engaging. Matteo was the bold one, asking constant questions and investigating every corner of the apartment with fearless curiosity. "Why don't you have more books?" Matteo asked on day 3, staring at my single bookshelf with disappointment. "Because I work nights and sleep during the day," I explained. "Not much time for reading. Papa has a whole room just for books. Hundreds of them." "Your papa has more money than me." "Papa, can Sofia use your book room?" Matteo asked with perfect 4-year-old logic. Dante looked up from the pasta he was stirring. "When we go home, Sofia can use whatever she wants." "Are we going home?" Marco asked quietly. "Or are we staying here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Dante's house, wherever it was, represented his real life. This apartment was just a temporary refuge. "That depends," Dante said carefully. "Do you feel safe here?" Both boys nodded immediately. "Then we'll stay as long as we need to. Sofia's apartment is home now." I caught his eye across the small kitchen, questioning. He just committed to staying indefinitely in my cramped space when he presumably owned a mansion somewhere. Later, after the boys were asleep in my bedroom, they refused to be separated even by a few feet. I confronted him. "You can't actually intend to stay here permanently. This was supposed to be temporary. A few days until you figured out better security." "Better security doesn't matter if they don't feel safe," Dante said. He was sitting at my coffee table, reviewing documents that Emilio had delivered earlier. "The house has every protection money can buy, but Marco and Matteo associated with the kidnapping attempt. They wake up screaming if we try to take them back there." "So you're just going to live in my 1-bedroom apartment forever?" "I'm going to live wherever my sons feel safe. Right now, that's here." He looked up at me, his dark eyes serious. "If that's a problem, it's not a problem exactly. It's just, this is my home, my space, and suddenly it's full of people and security guards and expensive coffee I didn't buy. You want us to leave?" His voice was neutral, but something flickered in his expression. Disappointment, maybe. "I want to understand what's happening. A week ago I was a janitor. Now I'm cohabitating with a mob boss and his children. It's a lot to process." "Fair enough." He set down his papers, giving me his full attention. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Who are you really, Dante Valentini? What's your life actually like? What am I getting into?" He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but you might not like all the answers." "I'll take that risk." He gestured for me to sit across from him, then began talking. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as if he'd been waiting for permission to be honest. His family had been in Chicago for 4 generations, building a legitimate import business that gradually expanded into less legal territory. His father had been a hard man, violent and controlling, with rigid ideas about power and respect. Dante had inherited the business at 25 when his father died, and spent the next 15 years consolidating control and modernizing operations. "I don't deal in drugs," he said firmly. "That's a line I won't cross. But protection, gambling, certain import-export arrangements that don't involve customs documentation, yes, I'm guilty of all that." "Have you killed people?" I asked quietly. "Yes." No hesitation, no justification. Men who threaten my family, my business, my territory. I'm not proud of it, but I won't lie about it either. "How many? Does the number matter? Would 10 be acceptable but 20 be too many? Is there a threshold where you decide I'm irredeemable?" "I don't know. I'm trying to understand who you are." He was quiet for a moment, his hands folded on the table between us. "I'm a man who lives in moral gray spaces. I've done things I can't undo, hurt people who probably deserved it but maybe didn't. I've built an empire on violence and fear and careful manipulation of systems that were corrupt anyway. But I love my sons more than anything in this world. I try to give Isabella everything she deserved before cancer took her. I keep my promises, protect the people who trust me, and never hurt anyone who hasn't earned it. He met my eyes steadily. I'm not a good man, Sofia, but I try to be a good father. That has to count for something. It does, I said softly. I've seen you with Marco and Matteo. The way you put them first, even when it costs you. That's not nothing. But is it enough? Enough for you to feel safe here, to keep helping me raise them? I thought about the question seriously. A week ago, the answer would have been no. Mob boss, murderer, criminal, those labels would have been enough to send me running. But I'd watched him cook pasta with patient care, explaining each step to curious sons. I'd seen him check on them 6 times a night, just to make sure they were still breathing. I'd heard him reading bedtime stories in Italian, his deep voice gentle and warm. I don't know if you're a good man, I admitted, but I know you're a good father. And right now, that's what Marco and Matteo need. So yes, it's enough. Relief flooded his expression, quickly masked but visible. Thank you for that honesty. You asked for everything. I'm giving it to you. Then let me give you something in return. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small handgun, placing it on the table between us. This is a Glock 43. 9mm, easy to conceal, minimal recoil. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to teach you how to use it. I stared at the weapon, my heartbeat accelerating. I don't want to shoot people. I don't want you to have to. But if someone threatens my sons while I'm not here, I need to know you can protect them. Will you let me teach you? Looking at the gun, I felt something shift in my chest. This was real. Not theoretical danger or abstract risk, but actual preparation for violence. Accepting this weapon meant accepting my place in Dante's world completely. 1 month, I said, picking up the gun with careful hands. You promised me 1 month to decide. I'm still deciding. 1 month, he agreed. But Sofia, you picked up that gun without hesitation. You're already decided. You just don't want to admit it yet. He was probably right. The shooting lessons began the next morning at a private range outside the city. Dante was a patient teacher, explaining mechanics and safety protocols with the same careful attention he gave to cooking pasta. I proved to be a decent shot, my hands steady even though my stomach churned at the thought of actually pointing this weapon at a person. You're a natural, Emilio observed, watching me hit the target center 4 times out of 6. Most people flinch on their first day. You're staying calm. I'm terrified, I corrected. I'm just good at hiding it. Even better. Controlled fear is useful. Panic gets you killed. By the end of the week, I could load, fire, and maintain the Glock with reasonable competence. Dante gave me a shoulder holster and made me practice drawing until the motion felt natural. This feels insane, I said, checking my draw in the mirror. I'm a former nursing student who cleans floors. Now I'm armed. Now you're protected, Dante corrected. There's a difference. Marco and Matteo seemed oblivious to the gun training, more interested in their coloring books and the park visits we'd started making under heavy security. They were laughing more, talking freely, sleeping through the night without screaming. The transformation was miraculous, and I knew it had less to do with me than with finally being safe from their monster. Victor Kane's trial was proceeding quickly. Dante's lawyers had ensured maximum publicity, exposing the hospital's security failures and Kane's predatory behavior in vivid detail. The man would spend the rest of his life in prison, assuming he survived that long. Prison hierarchies had their own justice system for child predators. Good, was all Dante said when Emilio reported the likely sentence. He earned every moment of suffering coming to him. On day 10, my sister Lily came home for the weekend. I prepared her somewhat, explaining that I'd taken a new job as a live-in nanny for a widower with twins. She didn't need to know about the mob boss part, or the attempted kidnapping, or the monster who'd been terrorizing children in a hospital. But when she walked into my apartment and found Dante Valentini cooking in my kitchen while armed security guards rotated through my hallway, her eyes went wide with understanding. Sofia, can I talk to you? Privately? We retreated to my bedroom, leaving Dante to entertain the boys. That's Dante Valentini, Lily hissed. The Dante Valentini. The one from the news about the hospital predator. You're working for him? I'm helping with his children, yes. Do you have any idea how dangerous? Yes, I interrupted. I know exactly how dangerous it is. I also know those boys needed someone who would protect them, and I was there when no one else was. Lily stared at me, her expression cycling through shock, fear, and something that might have been admiration. You saved them. That was you in the news reports, wasn't it? The janitor who found the evidence. That was me. And now you're living with him? With them. Soph, this is insane. It's temporary. 1-month trial period. After that, I'll decide if I want to stay. You're going to stay, Lily said with certainty. I can see it on your face. You've already decided. I don't know what I've decided. Bullshit. You look at those boys the way Mom used to look at us. You're already attached. And him, she gestured toward the kitchen. The way he watches you when you're not looking. That's not just gratitude, Soph. That's something else. You're imagining things. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, you've gone from surviving to living in less than 2 weeks. That apartment was a cave you hid in between shifts. Now it's full of people and noise and kids' laughter. Tell me you don't feel more alive than you have in 3 years. I couldn't tell her that, because it would be a lie. The truth was that every moment with Marco and Matteo felt like rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten existed. The part that wanted to nurture and protect, and build something lasting. And Dante. He's complicated, I said instead of addressing Lily's observations about how he watched me. He's a criminal. He's a father who loves his children. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, and you know it. Lily was right, but I didn't want to admit it. Not yet. Not when admitting it meant acknowledging that I was falling for a man whose world included violence and moral compromise. We returned to the kitchen to find Dante teaching both boys how to make fresh pasta. They were covered in flour, laughing as they tried to operate the pasta roller, and the domestic scene was so normal it made my chest ache. Lily, Dante said, noticing us. It's nice to meet you officially. Sofia speaks about you constantly. Mr. Valentini. Lily's tone was polite but cool. Protective sister assessing the man occupying her sister's life. Please, call me Dante. You're family to Sofia, which makes you important to all of us. The casual inclusion, the assumption that what mattered to me mattered to him, sent warmth through my chest that I tried desperately to ignore. Lily stayed for dinner, watching carefully as Dante interacted with his sons, as Emilio maintained professional distance, as I moved through the space with increasing comfort. I saw her reservations soften slightly, though the wariness never fully left her eyes. He seems like a good father, she admitted as I walked her to the door. And the boys clearly adore you. But Soph, please be careful. Men like Dante Valentini don't exist without making enemies. I know. Do you? Because falling for him would complicate everything. I'm not falling for him. She looked at me with the knowing eyes of someone who'd shared every secret of my childhood. Yes, you are. And I think he's falling for you too. Just don't lose yourself in this, okay? Remember who you are beyond being their monster hunter. After she left, I found Dante putting the boys to bed. He was reading them a story in Italian, his deep voice soothing as he navigated the familiar tale. Your sister doesn't trust me, he observed once they'd fallen asleep. Can you blame her? I told her I was working as a nanny. She arrives to find armed guards as Chicago's most notorious mob boss in my kitchen. Notorious is harsh. I prefer selectively visible. A hint of humor in his tone. She's protective of you. That's good. You should have people watching out for your interests. She thinks I'm falling for you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dante went very still, his dark eyes finding mine in the semi-darkness of the bedroom. Are you? He asked quietly. Falling for me? I don't know. Maybe. This whole situation is confusing and intense, and nothing like anything I've experienced before. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. I met his gaze steadily. What about you? Am I just the convenient nanny who saved your sons, or something more? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't respond. Then, you're the woman who got down on her knees and looked at the world from my children's perspective. Who noticed scratches everyone else missed. Who offered her home to strangers because it was the right thing to do. He moved closer, and suddenly the small bedroom felt even smaller. You're the first person since Isabella died who made me think that maybe, just maybe, I could have something beyond violence in business and moral compromise. That maybe I could build something real with someone who sees me clearly and chooses me anyway. Dante, but I won't rush you, won't pressure you. You wanted 1 month to decide, and I'll give you that. If at the end you want to walk away, I'll let you go with my blessing and enough money to start whatever life you want. And if I don't want to walk away? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. Then we'll figure out what comes next. Together. He kissed me then, soft and careful, a question rather than a demand. I kissed him back, letting myself feel the connection I'd been fighting for 2 weeks. When we broke apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. 1 month, he murmured. 1 month, I agreed. But we both knew the decision had already been made. The world ended on day 14. I was at the small park with Marco and Matteo, Emilio watching from a nearby bench, when my phone rang. Dante's name flashed on the screen. Sofia, listen carefully. His voice was tight with controlled panic. Take the boys to Emilio's car. Now. Don't ask questions. Don't look around. Just move. What's happening? Someone found you. 3 cars approaching your location. You have maybe 2 minutes. The line went dead. Emilio was already moving, having received the same alert. He scooped up both boys in one smooth motion while I grabbed their backpacks. Run, he said quietly. Don't look back. We made it to the armored SUV parked at the curb. Emilio shoved the boys into the back seat, pushing me in after them before sliding into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. Black sedans appeared at both ends of the street, boxing us in. Hold on, Emilio said calmly, then reversed at high speed, jumping the curb and cutting through the park itself. Trees whipped past as he navigated between playground equipment with terrifying precision. Marco and Matteo clung to me, silent but terrified. I wrapped my arms around them, my body shielding theirs as Emilio burst through a fence and onto a side street. Gunfire erupted behind us. The rear window shattered, safety glass raining down but holding its structure. Stay down! Emilio shouted, weaving through traffic with the skill of someone who'd done this before. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I pressed the boys to the floor, my body covering theirs completely. More gunfire. The SUV's armor held, but I could hear the impacts, feel the vehicle shudder with each hit. Emilio was on his phone, barking orders in Italian. Then, abruptly, we pulled into an underground parking garage. 2 more SUVs were waiting, and Dante emerged from one, his face pale with fear. He yanked open our door, pulling his sons into his arms with desperate strength. Are you hurt? Any of you? We're fine, I managed, my voice shaking. Emilio got us out. Who are they? Emilio asked, already checking his weapons. Russians. Sergei Volkov's crew. Dante's jaw was tight with rage. They've been looking for leverage against me for months. Someone told them about the boys, about Sofia. The hospital, I said, understanding dawning. When Kane was arrested, there was press coverage. Someone connected the dots. And now they know my son's weakness is their nanny who lives in Pilsen. Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw guilt there alongside the fear. I brought this danger to you, Sofia. I'm so sorry. Later, Emilio interrupted. Right now we need to move. They'll be tracking the SUV, and this garage won't stay secure long. We transferred to a different vehicle, one I didn't recognize. Dante held both boys in his lap, murmuring reassurances in Italian while I tried to stop shaking. The safe house was 40 minutes outside Chicago, a sprawling estate surrounded by walls and armed guards. We were rushed inside by more security personnel than I could count. This is Castellano, Dante explained as we entered. My most secure property. No one outside my inner circle knows it exists. The house was massive but surprisingly warm, decorated with comfortable furniture and walls full of family photographs. I realized with a start that this must have been where he lived with Isabella, where the boys had spent their early childhood. Marco, Matteo, Dante said gently, kneeling before his sons. Do you remember this place? Both boys looked around with growing recognition. Matteo ran to a bookshelf, pulling out a worn teddy bear that must have been his from before. Home, Marco whispered. This is home. Yes, Piccolo. We're home now, and we're going to stay here where it's safe. Over the next few hours, I learned the full extent of Dante's response. The Russians who'd attacked us had been eliminated by his people within 20 minutes of the shooting. Sergei Volkov himself had received a very clear message about the consequences of targeting the Valentini family. It's over, Emilio reported. Volkov is requesting a sit-down. He claims it was rogue elements, not sanctioned by him. I don't care about his excuses, Dante said coldly. He allowed his people to shoot at my children. That requires a response. What kind of response? I asked quietly. He looked at me, and I saw the mob boss clearly for the first time. Not the gentle father, or the man who'd kissed me softly, but the dangerous criminal who'd built an empire on calculated violence. The kind that ensures no one ever makes this mistake again. That night, after the boys were asleep in their old bedroom, which had been maintained perfectly despite 3 weeks of absence, Dante found me on the terrace overlooking the grounds. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to really hear it. I turned to face him, seeing exhaustion and determination in equal measure. This is my world, Sofia. Today wasn't an aberration or bad luck. This is what being close to me means. People will always try to hurt what I love. They'll always look for weaknesses to exploit. And you, his voice cracked slightly. You and my sons are my biggest weaknesses. So what are you saying? I'm saying I won't blame you if you walk away. Today proved that my promise of protection was hollow. I couldn't even keep you safe for 2 weeks before someone found you. But Emilio did keep us safe. Your security worked. We're all alive. This time. What about next time? What about the time after that? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I asked you for 1 month to decide. I'm releasing you from that obligation. You can leave now, tonight, with everything I promised. Lily's tuition paid, enough money to start over somewhere safe, and my eternal gratitude for saving my sons. I studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the careful walls rebuilding themselves. He was protecting himself from rejection by offering it first. What do you want? I asked. Forget about what's practical or safe. What do you actually want? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want you to stay. I want to watch you become part of my sons' lives permanently. I want to fall asleep beside you every night and wake up to you every morning. I want to give you everything you've ever deserved but never received. But I love you too much to ask you to live in constant danger. To always be looking over your shoulder, wondering if today's the day someone uses you to hurt me. The confession of love slipped out so naturally, he didn't even seem to notice. But I noticed. My heart noticed. You love me, I said softly. He froze, realizing what he'd admitted. Yes, I know it's too soon, and the situation is complicated, and I have no right. I love you too. His eyes snapped to mine, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. I love you, I repeated, and I love Marco and Matteo. In 2 weeks, you've all become the family I didn't know I was missing. Yes, today was terrifying. Yes, this life is dangerous. But Dante, I've spent 3 years just surviving. You've given me a reason to live again. Sofia, I'm staying. Not for the money or the security, or because I feel obligated. I'm staying because this is where I belong. With you, with them, building something real. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms with desperate strength. You're certain? Because once you commit to this life, once you're truly part of my world, there's no going back to invisibility. I don't want to be invisible anymore. I want to be yours. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the gentle kiss from before. This was claiming and promise, and the beginning of something that couldn't be undone. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Marry me! I pulled back to look at him. What? Marry me. Not someday or eventually. Soon. Because I want the whole world to know you're mine. I want legal protection wrapped around you so tight that anyone who thinks about hurting you knows they're declaring war on the Valentini family. That's possibly the least romantic proposal in history. Then let me try again. He took my hands, his dark eyes serious. Sofia Chen, you walked into my life when I needed you most. You saved my sons, yes, but you also saved me. You reminded me that life could be more than business and obligation. You made me want to be the man Isabella believed I could be. You are that man. You've always been that man. Only with you. Only when I see myself through your eyes. He squeezed my hands gently. Marry me because I love you. Because you're already the mother my sons needed. Because every day with you feels like coming home. Marry me because I can't imagine my future without you in it. Tears blurred my vision. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. He pulled a ring from his pocket. He'd been carrying it, I realized, waiting for the right moment, and slipped it onto my finger. The diamond caught the moonlight, throwing rainbow refractions across the terrace. It was beautiful and excessive and perfect. How long have you been carrying this? I asked. 3 days. Since the moment I realized I couldn't let you go. You were very confident I'd say yes. I was very hopeful you'd say yes. There's a difference. We kissed again, softer this time, savoring the moment. Behind us, the house full of his people and his security and his entire complicated world waited. But out here, it was just us and the promise we just made. The boys, I said suddenly. Should we tell them? In the morning. Let them have one peaceful night's sleep first. He pulled me close, his arms wrapped around me from behind as we looked out over the grounds. Then we'll tell them they're getting the monster hunter as a permanent mother. I'm never going to live down that nickname, am I? Never. It's too perfect. We stood there for a long time, planning the future. The wedding would be small and private, just family and close friends. I'd officially adopt Marco and Matteo, giving them legal protection under my name as well as Dante's. We'd split time between the apartment, which the boys still loved, and this estate, giving them both the normalcy they craved and the security they needed. What about your business? I asked. The dangerous parts. I'm making changes, moving toward more legitimate operations, reducing the violence. He was quiet for a moment. Isabella made me promise to give the boys a normal life. I thought I could do that while maintaining my empire. Today proved I was wrong. Something has to change. You'd give it all up? For them. For them. For you. For the family we're building. He turned me in his arms, his expression serious. I've made enough money to live comfortably for 10 lifetimes. The empire was about power and respect and proving something to my father's ghost. But none of that matters if I lose what's actually important. Your people won't like it. The transition. Some will understand. Others won't. But Emilio will handle the transition, and I trust him completely. He smiled slightly. Besides, I'll still be involved. Consulting, advising, ensuring the family business stays in family hands. I'm just stepping back from the parts that get people killed. It was a huge decision, one that would reshape his entire world. But I could see he meant it. For his sons, for me, Dante Valentini was choosing a different path. I'm proud of you, I whispered. Don't be. I'm just finally becoming the man I should have been all along. The next morning, we told Marco and Matteo over breakfast. Their reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. Matteo literally jumped up and down while Marco hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You're staying forever? Marco asked, needing the reassurance. Forever, I confirmed. I'm going to be your mama, if that's okay with you. It's okay, Matteo shouted. We wanted you to be our mama. We told Papa, but he said we had to wait. Dante laughed, pulling all of us into a group hug. I wanted to make sure Sofia was ready first. But now she is, so we're a family. A real family. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the estate's garden, surrounded by late autumn flowers and the people who mattered most. Lily stood as my maid of honor, her earlier reservations replaced by genuine happiness. Emilio served as best man, stoic as ever but with a hint of a smile. Marco and Matteo were ring bearers, dressed in tiny suits and taking their responsibilities incredibly seriously. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Matteo loudly proclaimed that anyone who tried to stop the wedding would have to fight him, which made everyone laugh. I wore a simple ivory dress, nothing elaborate, because this wasn't about spectacle. It was about commitment, about choosing this life and this family with open eyes and full heart. When Dante slipped the wedding band onto my finger, his hands were shaking slightly. With this ring, I promise to protect you, cherish you, and spend every day trying to be worthy of your love. With this ring, I replied, I promise to stand beside you, build this family with you, and remind you every day that you're already worthy. The kiss was chaste. We had children watching, but full of promise for later. At the reception, Lily pulled me aside. You're happy. Really happy. I am. Is that okay? It's more than okay. I was wrong to doubt him. Anyone who looks at you the way he does, who loves his children the way he does, that's a good man, regardless of his past. He's making changes, stepping back from the dangerous parts of the business. For you. For all of us. Because family matters more than power. She hugged me tight. Mom and Dad would be proud of you. You found something real, Soph. Something worth fighting for. As the evening progressed, I found myself watching Dante dance with our sons, all three of them laughing at Mateo's enthusiastic but terrible rhythm. This was my family now. These beautiful, complicated people who'd chosen me just as surely as I'd chosen them. Emilio appeared at my elbow. Congratulations, Mrs. Valentini. Thank you. And thank you for saving us that day. I never properly expressed my gratitude. Your family now. Protecting you is protecting them. It's what I do. He paused, then added quietly, he's a different man with you. Lighter somehow. That's a gift you've given all of us. Later that night, after the guests had left and the boys were asleep, Dante and I stood in our bedroom, because this was home now, and he pulled me close. No regrets, he asked. Not a single one. You. Just that I didn't find you sooner. That we wasted years not knowing each other. We found each other when we were supposed to. When the boys needed us both. He kissed me softly. You saved them, you know. Not just from Cain, but from a life without joy. They were so serious before you, so weighed down by trauma. Now they laugh again. They trust again. We saved each other. All four of us. 5 years later, I stood in that same garden, watching Marco and Mateo play with their baby sister Elena. At 9 years old, the boys were confident and happy, with only occasional nightmares to remind us of their traumatic early years. Dante had successfully transitioned out of active criminal operations, serving instead as an advisor to legitimate family businesses. Some of his former associates had been angry, but most understood. Family came first, always. The estate had become a real home, filled with laughter and the chaos of raising 3 children. My apartment in Pilsen remained, occasionally used when we wanted to remember where it all started. Lily had graduated with honors and was now working at St. Sebastian's Children's Hospital, a deliberate choice that made us all emotional. She found her calling in pediatric nursing, inspired by her sister's ability to see children others overlooked. What are you thinking about? Dante asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind in a gesture that had become habitual. How far we've come. How much has changed. Not everything. I still love you exactly as much as the day I proposed on the terrace. Liar. You love me more now. You're right. More every day, like I promised. He kissed my temple. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to stay. For seeing past the monster everyone else saw to the father trying desperately to protect his children. For building this family with me. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become my entire world. Thank you for letting me find my purpose. For showing me that surviving and living are different things. For giving me a family worth fighting for. Elena called for us, demanding her parents' attention with the imperious tone of a 3-year-old who knew she was adored. We walked hand in hand toward our children, toward the life we'd built from danger and fear and unexpected love. The monster hunter and the mob boss, raising children in a house full of second chances. And somewhere in heaven, I like to think Isabella was smiling, knowing her sons had found exactly what they needed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next.